Can you trust anyone in a post-apocalyptic vampire world? That's the question posed in this week's episode of Seraph of the End. This week's episode was a glorified setup to the big battle of Nagoya. That being said, this week's episode was actually really nice. It had some great writing, we got to see a lot of development from some characters, as well as some pretty cool surprises and even more mysteries. This week's episode had it all. Demon schoolgirls, Lolita vampire blood-sucking, freaky deaky human experimentation, not to mention exploring what happens when you get a bad case of bedhead. A problem which thankfully does not apply to me. So this was a very slow plotting episode, but there were a lot of things I really liked about it. First and foremost, I have to say that Yu's character has evolved so much since the beginning of the series. Frankly, he was getting kind of grating towards the end of the first season, and he truly has matured into a much more interesting character. I especially love the dynamic that he basically wants to continue to work with Guren so that he can protect all of his friends, but also so that he can save Mika. It's a really heartwarming scene when they're all hanging out at the beginning of the episode, having breakfast, and he sort of confesses everything to them, and they decide to go all along together because they're all just best buddies. They're also planting the seeds for the romantic subplot between Shinoa and Yu, and it's really not all that off-putting, and it actually does feel natural. Shinoa is still a lovable troll, by the way. Speaking of Shinoa, we might have actually seen her sister in this week's episode during this fantastic dialogue scene between Guren and Kureto. Kureto actually ends up calling Guren out to this training field where there are these three vampires who are tied up to this massive scythe. Why? I don't know, it looks metal as hell. The scene here has some very tense writing, and it almost kind of feels like walking on hot coals. I really love the fact that Kureto himself has this really big plan where not only are they going to destroy all of the vampires, but they're going to take over the world itself with the Moon Demon Company. It's pretty obvious that Guren doesn't really want to go along with this plan, but at the same time, in order to both fulfill their goals, they are going to have to team up with one another. This is also when we learn that Guren and his group are actually going to be going to Nagoya for this big battle, and it just so happens that all of the vampires are going to be going there as well, so shit about to get real, clearly. But the coolest thing about this scene, without a doubt, is that we actually get to see the demon form of Guren's weapon, the humanized form, which is Shinoa's sister. She's a demon schoolgirl, she looks really creepy, and I can't wait to see more of what she's all about. Obviously, whenever there's a scene with Shinoa and Guren together, I almost expect them to talk about that, but they're keeping it very low-key, which is a very great hook. It's going to get a lot of people to continue watching. Those with a Lolita fetish are also going to like this episode because there is a fantastic scene where Mika returns to the vampire headquarters, and he's so thirsty for blood that he denies Cruel's typical vial of blood and goes right for her neck, just biting right into it. It's pretty freaking creepy. But this scene is also really important because this is also where we learn that Cruel has some sort of secret plan herself, which is going to involve Mika, Yu, and the Seraph of the End. And she whispers this plan to Mika. We do not hear this, and I'm not really sure what her deal is. I don't know if she's really planning to just destroy all humanity. Maybe she's trying to usurp all of the power from the aristocratic vampires. I'm not really sure, but I am very intrigued to see what's going on here, because despite the fact that Cruel sees her relationship with Mika as sort of like an owner and her dog relationship, I still think she cares for the character a little bit more. She could have killed him at any time. Apparently she's pretty freaking powerful, because Mika even tries to punch her this week, and she just effortlessly grabs his hand and bends his freaking fingers backwards, getting ready to break his arm, but she still throws him a bone and decides to keep him around. Clearly, their relationship is one of the more complex of the series, and in many ways, it's very similar to the relationship between Yu and his inner demon, Ashoramaru, just it's played out a little differently, and I'd like to hope that there is going to be a connection between all of this stuff. I think that would be really cool. But the episode ends with Kureto and his group doing this weird experiment where they have this kid who's being tested on with all this crazy looking technology. They put this thing over his head, and then suddenly all this black demon energy just starts exploding all over the place. I'm not sure what this is. Maybe they are actually creating demons that they can weaponize and use in battle. Maybe they're trying to forcibly create some sort of brand new weapon. I'm not sure, but I definitely don't trust Kureto at all. I definitely trust Guren a lot more, and that's only because every single thing that Kureto is doing is incredibly shady, and he's just sort of beating around the bush around a lot of things. I just don't trust that guy at all. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Seraph of the End? This was a very good episode with really good writing, and it really proves that the show has matured a lot since its first season. The characters just seem a little more fleshed out and interesting this time, and a lot of that is the fact that they're not so cookie cutter as they were before, especially with the character of Yu, who, like I said, I really feel has matured quite a bit. He's not as annoying, he's not a carbon copy of Eren from Attack on Titan anymore. He really has developed into something else, and a lot of that does have to do with the results of the end of the first season, running into Mika, turning into a giant demon monster. You know, that will bring about a change in someone's life, and I'm really glad that they're actually sticking to their guns with that. I also just like all of just the little scenes this week, you know, just getting to see all the characters hanging out in just a natural setting, especially at the beginning when they're cooking breakfast. It's a real funny scene with Shinua and Mitsu actually trying to make breakfast for them and completely failing. They can't even make something as simple as an omelet, and that's of course when Kimizuki has to jump in and school them in the ways of cookery. It's a pretty nice scene, and it also just demonstrates again that these guys have truly become a family. When you see them sitting around, just enjoying each other's company, sipping tea, having breakfast, it really does feel natural and inviting, and I really like that. But the three things that I'm most interested in about this episode, without a doubt, is the scene with Guren and his weird demon weapon, which clearly is Shinua's sister. You have the experiment that's being done at the end of the episode, and what's the deal with Cruel and her plan. I just cannot wait to see that play out. So this was a very nice setup episode. It was very tense, very atmospheric, and is proving that the second season of Seraph of the End is infinitely better than the first, at least in my opinion. So I thought this was a good episode. I thought the pacing was a little slow, but for the most part, this was still a very good story episode of the series, with lots of mystery and intrigue, and even some heartwarming moments. So I'm going to give this episode a 4 out of 5. Check it out, Seraph of the End fans. If you're just reading the manga version or you're watching the anime, watch this episode. You might see something you like. But before you guys leave today, I would love to hear your thoughts about this week's episode of Seraph of the End. What did you think about it in general? What do you think Cruel's secret plan is going to be? And whose side are you on? Guren or Kureto? Please tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching my video. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!